appeal more to minorities such as blacks and Hispanics, are going to be critical to getting that Obama coalition out, which is going to be the third term of President Obama's term if she gets elected. So somebody like Secretary Castro, young, Hispanic, millennial, has domestic policy experience being over a cabinet area. Someone like a Secretary Tom Perez over at Labor, bona fide progressive liberal credentials. Or you can look to somebody like a Senator Sherrod Brown or Senator Cory Booker, who also have that appeal to millennials and they appeal to the minority vote, which is going to be critical. And the last point I'll make is this, Larry. Whomever she picks is going to need to be somebody that has been lockstep behind President Obama's agenda and someone who is truly a progressive and can appeal to those people who are looking for somebody like a Bernie Sanders, if she doesn't pick him, that gives them what she doesn't have, that authentic millennial connection, because she's going to need that turnout in order to win.
All right, 866-893-KPCC or the AirTalk page, kpcc.org. I'm not sure that Warren can't connect or doesn't connect to millennials, but she is 66, so she's close in age to Hillary Clinton, and certainly the presumptive nominee might look to someone more youthful to counterbalance age on the ticket. 866-893-KPCC or the AirTalk page, kpcc.org. Michael, joining us from Boston, Massachusetts. Good to have you with us. Your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so first of all, I admire the way the Republican consultant brought in the Republican talking point of third Obama term that Trump also just used. I think Clinton should choose a moderate Republican, or any liberal Republican if there are any left, or perhaps Michael Bloomberg, an ex-Republican, because I think there are a lot of Republicans who would really rather not vote for Donald Trump and would like an excuse to not vote for it.
All right, Michael, I appreciate it. Paris, do you see any way in the world she would consider an independent or Republican?
And not appeal to that base that she needs to turn out for her. I mean, look, Bloomberg was a pick that be someone that's similar to Donald Trump, but in this political climate, when you have the country as divided along political lines that as we are, she really is going to need somebody who's a strong Democrat, who has domestic policy experience, and someone who can really connect to millennial and minority voters, and as someone who is likable and trustworthy and that has that experience and connectability. I don't see a Republican being on the ticket that's going to appease the base that she needs to turn out in strong numbers. But it's a good idea.
Tony in Pasadena says Jim Webb would be my choice. He's a bulldog with a background that appeals to conservative, except for his party switch. William in Alhambra says, I'm old school, a Democrat from Ohio, Texas, or Florida. I still think Julian Castro is a good choice. Let's see. Jack in Ventura says, I see Warren being better used as a chief of staff or as whoever's in charge of putting the boots to Wall Street. Let's see. Joyce says, I think either John Kerry or Julian Castro would be a good choice. Stephen in Irvine says, I'm in financial services, and while it might be news to Ms. Warren, I'm not a criminal. As a moderate, I'd prefer someone who hasn't made their name by bashing me personally. L in West Hollywood says Secretary of Labor Tom Perez. He's smart, funny, and progressive. He would be a bit of a surprise choice, and I think the base would really respond to him. 866-893-KPCC or the AirTalk page, kpcc.org. Janice writes, there's no evidence the nation as a whole is prepared to put a woman in the White House. The two-women ticket with Warren presumes a lot. We're pretty open-minded, but it's a big country. We're pretty open-minded here, she says, but it's a big country. Natalie in Aliso Viejo, who would be your choice to run alongside Hillary Clinton?
Well, if she chooses Elizabeth Warren as her running mate, I will vote for her in the general election. I voted for Bernie Sanders in the primaries, and I was not planning on voting for her in November. But I will if she chooses Elizabeth Warren. So
that's the difference maker. Now, so if she picked someone you wouldn't consider progressive, would you just not vote for president in November?
I mean, I was kind of hoping that Bernie Sanders would run as an independent or file as a write-in candidate, but I know that's a long shot. I would have to see who else she's considering, but I just love Elizabeth Warren. So if she chooses her, she has my vote.
All right, I appreciate it. Thanks very much, Natalie. Russ writes on the page, Hillary Clinton should pick Warren for two big reasons. Be the best way to get some of the Sanders supporters on her side. And Hillary's been playing on her first woman president candidacy. Selecting a woman to be VP would be a bold statement about female power. I think it would be a bit of a compromise and a safe, timid choice to select a male VP. 866-893-KPCC. MKLA says Sherrod Brown, young, smart, progressive. 866-893-5722. Aaron, in Tarzana, your pick to be a running mate.
Well, I was going to say Sherrod Brown, too. I think it needs to be a female male team, and Ohio's definitely a swing state, so I'd weigh in for Sherrod Brown. But a progressive male, like a minority male like Julian Castro or Booker would be good, too, but Booker, that state is going to be Democratic anyway, so I think you need to maximize the swing states in a selection for VP. And I wanted to answer the young woman from Orange County. Elizabeth Warren isn't going to do it. She's far more valuable in the Senate. We could get the Senate back, and she'll have a key position in the Senate. VP isn't a very powerful position, so people who love Elizabeth Warren, as do I, must realize she's far more effective in the Senate than she could ever be as VP.
All right, Aaron, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Paris Denard, I know you have to go, but thank you for being with us and sharing your thoughts on possible VP picks.
Absolutely, Larry. It's my pleasure. And I would just say this to close. Your viewers, your listeners are very smart, and I think the Clinton campaign should listen to what they're saying. It's less about geographic. It is more about policy, experience, and who the person is. And this could be the one election where the VP candidate could make a difference because both candidates have such high negatives. So thank you, Larry.
Paris, I appreciate it very much. Paris Denard, Republican consultant with us on Air Talk. Let me go back to Angela Rye, Democratic analyst. Your thoughts on what our last caller said about Elizabeth Warren being too valuable in the Senate for progressives to leave there?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly understand what she's saying, but I think that we underestimate the value of the vice president. I think that we've seen over the last 8 years the importance that Joe Biden has played with the president being able to default to him on certain foreign policy issues. He regularly takes calls and meetings and brokers deals with other foreign leaders. So I think that we're really overplaying our hand a bit there. I think we don't know what that will look like. I think the one thing we know for sure is that people are afraid of a woman ticket. It's never been done. It would be historic in and of itself. And I think that if we're honest, we would acknowledge the fact that this hasn't been a terribly exciting campaign. People haven't, when they came out with Ready for Hillary, there were a lot of people saying, I'm not ready and I don't know if I'll ever be. And so there has to be someone that generates a lot of interest in the ticket. I think Paris mentioned all the people that have been named in the press for some time as potential running mates. One person he left off is, and of course now I'm blanking on who it is, Tim Kaine from Virginia, former DNC chairman. Some of these names are known for policy expertise, for being great politicians, including Sherrod Brown. But I don't think that people feeling the burn are going to be excited enough to go and vote for them. So Hillary Clinton, we know, has some gaps to make up for. We talked about some women. She's done pretty well with women. She's certainly doing better than Donald Trump. But she has a gap with progressives, and she has a gap with what we would know as what they call Reagan Democrats, which I believe is oxymoronic. It doesn't really exist. But these blue-collar white males, and we have to acknowledge that it may be a group that she's not going to be able to pick up. There have been article after article, data after data saying that this is a group that is shrinking, particularly in the Democratic Party. They're no longer leaning Democrat as much. So there may be some opportunities for her to pick up some additional black and brown multicultural voters. There's certainly some room to grow with Asian voters based on the data that we saw from 2012. So she's got to figure out who's going to draw out the excitement. We have to start focusing on turnout at this point, not necessarily going for votes that she may not ever get.
All right, let's talk with Fernando in Glendale. You're on Air Talk.
Thank you. I think not having Bernie Sanders being invited to be part of this new government is a slap in the face. and I think the Democrat has to be very careful with this choice they're making. I think all of us who are Bernie Sanders supporters, in my case, I'll be campaigning and I'll be voting for Donald Trump just to show my anguish and my problem with Bernie not being part of it, not being invited to be part of it.
Even though Hillary Clinton's politics are far closer to Bernie Sanders than Donald Trump's, the judgment of not choosing Bernie Sanders would push you to vote for Trump.
It's a slap in the face of us and people who want change, people who want a different kind of government. It's a slap in the face, and I will, and along with a lot of other Democrats, friends of mine, we're going to be campaigning and voting for Donald Trump in case Bernie Sanders is not part of it. And they should be very careful with this choice they're making.
Fernando, I appreciate your call. Angela, your thoughts on his point?
Yeah, I think that Fernando's an anomaly for a lot of reasons, and you just kind of mentioned it in your question. That is, well, what about the fact that they're far closer together in terms of policy prescriptions and views than Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders? They had a 93% similar voting record when Hillary Clinton was in the Senate voting. That's how close they are in terms of policy alignment. So I think that Bernie supporters who are angry about where things are right now should keep their powder dry. I really believe that Bernie Sanders is going to be one of the most valuable assets and will be campaigning for the Democratic ticket. So I hope that they would continue to follow their candidate and do what's right and in their best interest. We've seen for years, Larry, folks who continue to vote against their own interests, and they really should ask themselves, what has it gotten them? The recession didn't come because Barack Obama was elected. The recession was already here, and he addressed it. So what has it gotten them so far over the decades voting against their interests? That would be my challenge.
All right. Adam in Alhambra writes on the page, while Warren will resonate favorably with Bernard's folks, she won't with blue-collar Trump supporters since they won't know who she is aside from another elitist chick, as he puts it. These folks don't watch Face the Nation or listen to Morning Edition. They won't know of her accomplishments at all. She'll probably play it safe like Obama, pick an establishment guy. That's Adam in Alhambra. River Mall writes on the page, all these picks sound much more exciting than I imagine the pick will be, but I worry a progressive and or young pick might feel like it did when McCain chose Palin and undermined some of Clinton's appeal. And Glenn O.C. writes on the page, she won't likely pick Sherrod Brown or Cory Booker because Democrats can't afford to lose any senators, and the Republican governors in those states would replace them with Republicans. There is a loophole in Massachusetts that could force a special election in January if Clinton chose Elizabeth Warren, but it would still be a risk. I suspect Julian Castro or Tim Kaine as top picks. That's Gleno writing on the Air Talk page, kpcc.org. Angela, if you had to put money on the timetable of her choosing a pick, how soon do you think that might come?
Well, we've been talking about it a lot. Excitement is still an issue, and so I think the sooner the better. But the only challenge with that, if I were to counter myself, would be that the sooner she picks the VP pick, her partner, her running mate, the more time Republicans and folks who are not all the way bought into this will have to vet them. And so I could see them waiting it out a little bit. But we definitely know for sure convention is around the corner. That person will certainly be brought on by then. I think it's interesting today that their meeting, Hillary Clinton and Elizabeth Warren's meeting, lasted more than an hour. And so that could be a positive sign for those of us who would be very interested in seeing that ticket. But I think that she's going to pick someone pretty soon. She's got some excitement to make up for. And as people have talked about over and over again, even Paris brought up the trustworthiness, honesty issues, despite the fact, I might add, Larry, that Donald Trump lies almost every time he opens his mouth. I am not being hyperbolic. There's actually data to show that. And so I think the interesting thing is that she's the one with the trustworthiness issue problem, right? So I think that they'll certainly move on that quickly.
Angela, good to talk with you again. Thanks very much.
Likewise. Thank you for having me, Larry. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you. Angela Rye, Democratic analyst, CEO of Impact Strategies in D.C. Victoria in South L.A. says, I could take Bernie or Elizabeth Warren. Both could address the conversation we need to have about economic inequality. Hillary Clinton's not getting my vote until she chooses someone forward-thinking. You can share your comments on potential running mates for Hillary Clinton on the Air Talk page, kpcc.org. Coming up, we'll take a look at the California state budget right after a live update from Hetty Lynn Earlys.
Larry, Michael Jace, who portrays an LAPD cop on The Shield, was sentenced today to 40 years to life in prison following a murder conviction for shooting his wife in front of their 2 children. Jace apologized to the family and said there's no justification for his actions. His attorney told jurors Jace acted in the heat of passion. 6 airlines won permission today to resume air service between the U.S. and Cuba. American, Frontier, JetBlue, Silver, Southwest, and Sun Country have been approved for a total of 155 round-trip flights a week. Most service is expected to begin this fall or early winter. Mexico will advance to the quarterfinals of the Copa America soccer tournament after a big game last night in Pasadena. KPCC's Torian Marino is among the 80,000-plus fans at the Rose Bowl.
The game has just ended. Mexico beating Jamaica 2-0. The referee has just blown the whistle. The players are making their way off the field, and the stands are still packed.
The Copa America tournament continues through June. This is the first time the U.S. has hosted it. The U.S. men's team has a big game against Paraguay tomorrow at 4. Hockey great Gordon Howe has died. Howe set NHL marks with 801 goals and 1,850 points that helped until Wayne Gretzky topped him in the record books. Gordon Howe was 88. Partly cloudy today, highs ranging from 70 at the beach to near 80 inland. It's 11:29.
KPCC supporters include Politicon, the unconventional political convention, from Governor Sarah Palin and James Carville to Ken Rudin and Ann Coulter, June 25th and 26th at the Pasadena Convention Center. Tickets at politicon.com.
Metro. The Metro Purple Line extension is conducting weekend closures this month on Wilshire Boulevard between Detroit Street and Highland Avenue. More at metro.net/Purple Line Extension.
People in Beirut did not recycle, they just threw things away until the city dump was closed. That's when an entrepreneur opened a recycling center and managed to encourage people to separate their metal, glass, paper, and plastic.
And I hope from the bottom of my heart that we can do it this way, because it's the correct way to do.
Beirut learns to recycle on the world. Weekdays at 2 on 89.3 KPCC.
Good morning, it's Air Talk. I'm Larry Mantle. Film Week comes your way in just half an hour. We'll hear about all the new movies coming out this week. We'll also take a look at Disney's announced sequel to Mary Poppins. Are there certain movies that are so sacrosanct they shouldn't be remade or had sequels made of them? We'll talk about that coming up later on Film Week. But first, Governor Brown and Democratic leaders of the state legislature have reached agreement on a new budget for California. It includes $400 million in low-income housing subsidies, but the governor has attached some strings. With us to talk about that and other aspects of the budget is LA Times Sacramento reporter Chris McGarrigan. Chris, good to have you with us again.
Hi, how are you doing?
Good, thanks. So let's talk first of all about the money for housing. What does the governor want in exchange for the housing dollars?
So the governor has set aside up to $400 million to pay for more affordable housing. However, in order to get that money, lawmakers are going to need to reach a deal with him on a plan to streamline regulations that would make it easier to build new housing. And there's been some disputes over how to reach that goal.
Well, and does that get into the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA, or is this short of projects that would make the projects fall under CEQA jurisdiction?
It's less of a direct thing about CEQA. It's a lot about other kinds of streamlining regulations. You know, the governor has not taken on CEQA directly more recently because that's just been too hard of a political lift for him.
So a lot of this then would seem to have to do with local jurisdictions. What does the state legislature have to do with the kinds of hoops that local cities have for builders to go through to build something?
Well, the issue with housing has become, a very big statewide issue. There's not enough housing being built to keep prices affordable and to house all the people who want to live in California. So the state is, considering, a statewide step that would kind of intervene in all these different situations.
Interesting. Also, as part of this $2 billion bond measure aimed at homeless who are mentally ill, and is that something that would go on the November ballot?
We're expecting that to come on the ballot, around then, yes.
And was that something that was part of the negotiations? Were Democrats in disagreement with the governor about that originally?
So that was actually something that had been agreed on earlier this year, and that kind of was settled going into the final budget negotiations.
And how much of a reserve fund is going to be part of this? Because the governor wanted more money put in the rainy day fund than did many of the Democrats in the legislature. What did they settle on?
So the governor had wanted an extra $2 billion to go into the rainy day fund. And that was something that he pushed forward to kind of cushion the state if there was another economic downturn. There was far less that was required to be put in, more like $1.2 billion. So basically now we're getting a total of $3.2 billion.
We had CJ who tweeted at Air Talk and at Larry Mantle. Be sure to mention those pesky unfunded liabilities that our polls are loath to discuss. Is there anything here about those kinds of financial commitments, pensions, and the like that the state's going to have to deal with down the road?
There are tons of these issues, and the state is doing some things to address this stuff. Basically, there are long-term plans into place to reduce the shortfall in the teacher pension fund, the general public worker pension fund, but there are other issues that are not being addressed. There's no deal to address infrastructure issues like roads, and there's tens of billions of dollars in overdue maintenance work that needs to be done there as well.
And there's still no deal there. And one of the big reasons Republicans and Democrats in the legislature don't agree on that, right? Republicans think the money is there, that there doesn't need to be a tax increase to fund those road repairs.
Basically, yeah, that's the bottom line. Democrats want to see either a new fee or maybe a change to the gas tax, or some other changes to raise new revenue. Republicans are saying, well, we're raising, spending on these other issues like childcare and welfare. Why don't we put aside some more money for the roads?
What about higher education? What's here for UC, CSU, community colleges?
So the state has been urging the higher education system to enroll more in-state students and to educate them, to take on more students total. So they've kind of dangled out some extra funding out there that if they do enroll those students, then they'll get that money.
Okay. And do we know yet what about CSUs or community colleges? Has that been agreed on?
Could you repeat that question, please?
Do we know if there's an agreement also on the California state universities and the community college funding?
That extra funding would involve the University of California and California State.
So, okay, the others would be about where they are now. Also, there's a removal of a cap known as a maximum family grant, which keeps families where there are additional kids from getting additional dollars to go toward those extra expenses. So now they'll get additional $136 a month per child, no limit on the number of kids in the household.
Yeah, this has been an extremely controversial issue, and one that advocates were very keen on taking care of in the budget. The rule's been around for 20 years, and they viewed it as a discriminatory policy that really punished families who were on welfare if they happened to have another child while they were receiving benefits. So yeah, as you mentioned, $136 per child per month would be received by these families. And you could see, 90,000 or so families receive additional benefits under this change.
I wonder, too, if the declining birth rate might have taken some of the pressure off of that, 20 years later, after at that point, there were much higher rate of pregnancy. Thank you for joining us. Appreciate your being with us, Chris, and talking through the deal that's been reached on the budget. How soon are they likely to take this up and vote on it? Chris, how soon are they likely to vote on it?
The deadline is on Wednesday, so they're probably going to vote early next week, and they've wrapped up the negotiations sooner than they often do before the deadline. All
right, Chris McGarry, LA Times writer based in Sacramento, covering the legislature. Thank you so much for being with us. Coming up on Air Talk, we're going to take a look at the new Expo line and generally taking light rail as a method for commuting longer distances to work. Is it really fast enough and a pleasant enough experience to be a good alternative to the car? But first, a live update from Hetty Lindherdes.
Larry, the White House is giving the U.S. military the go-ahead to conduct airstrikes on the Taliban in Afghanistan if necessary. Senior U.S. and defense officials say the decision was made over the last few days as Afghans continue to struggle with a resurgent Taliban. Officials say they've approved a plan to conduct airstrikes in an effort to help support Afghan forces. Filipino bakery workers who claim they were trafficked into Southern California have been awarded new visas. T visas, as they're known, provide victims of human trafficking temporary legal status and work authorization. The workers won a $15 million default judgment last month against the owner of a now-defunct bakery. They claim the owners fraudulently lured them to the U.S. on visas and forced them to work 17-hour days for just $3 an hour. Democratic Congressman Ted Lieu of Torrance helped secure the new visa protection.
Instead of being quiet and not saying anything to authorities, these workers showed great courage and told the truth to authorities, and the authorities came in, labor commissioner, and prosecuted their owner and got a huge fine.
Asian Americans Advancing Justice in Los Angeles also helped secure the visas. The workers say they were recruited in the Philippines with the promise of doubling their income. City officials have announced the winning design team for a new park plan for downtown LA. The park would sit across from City Hall and include more green space, tree cover, and a restaurant. You can see the plans and artist renderings on our website, kpcc.org. It's 11:39.
KPCC supporters include UCLA, where optimism has been the spark for breakthroughs and innovation for nearly a century, inspiring professors like Yoram Cohen to find new ways to reclaim gray water and make it reusable. One of the many efforts in the Grand Challenge Initiative to make LA 100% water and energy sustainable by 2050, making LA a model for sustainable urban living around the world. At UCLA, optimists work to turn challenges into opportunities, to push forward and do the impossible. Learn more at ucla.edu/optimists.
News programming on KPCC is made possible by the Mohn Family Foundation, supporting quality reporting on critical issues for Southern California.
Hollywood is doing something different. They're making movies in Cuba. It's not easy, though. More next time on Marketplace. Weekdays at 3 and 6:30 on 89.3 KPCC.
Last week, I got home from work and I was looking around different news articles, and I happened to read a piece by Joe Matthews of Socolow that was in the Southern California news group papers like the LA Daily News, and he was describing trying to commute from his home in Pasadena to his office in Santa Monica via the Gold Line and the Expo Line, and he described how long it took, more than 2.5 hours each way, how he even got home so late he was late to pick up his kid at childcare. And then I went from there to Robin Abkarian's piece in the Los Angeles Times, where she was talking about how pleasant it was and talking with people, the social experience of the Expo Line, but that it also took her forever to take the Expo Line because of how slow the train goes. So my question for you is, if you've started riding the recently opened Expo Line, have you found it an acceptable alternative to the car, or is it simply too slow or unpleasant in other ways to make it a viable alternative alternative. 866-893-KPECC, 866-893-5722, or the Air Talk page, kpecc.org. With me is KPCC's commuting and mobility reporter, Megan McCarty. Megan, good morning.
Good morning, Larry.
So what reviews have you been getting from Expo riders?
Well, I've certainly seen a lot of people, responding to my tweets, to my stories with a lot of excitement about, being able to mix up their commute, bike, take the train, having this new option available. But certainly it is slow. It's light rail. It's not a subway. In many cases, it has to stop for traffic, like a car stops, at a red light. It's not as fast, I think, as some people, especially people who may not be accustomed to the trade-offs of taking public transit, would hope that it would be to complete a trip like this and to be, a viable option for a lot of people who may not be used to riding transit.
Well, and we still don't have the downtown connector, which is another factor in making this a longer trip for people who get on before the expo line.
Absolutely, and I think that will make a really big difference, because what I've been hearing from people is that there have been some holdups at 7th and Metro Station, where they've transferred from Union Station. It takes about 10 minutes. Maybe they had to wait for a train at Union Station to get to 7th and Metro, then they have to wait again. There have been delays down the track that have caused delays at 7th and Metro from the originating trains, and so it all kind of, builds up into this mountain of delays that I think has made the train seem a lot slower than even it actually is, which it's about the same amount of trip time as the old Pacific Electric red cars, which seems surprising to me.
Which was going 100 years ago. That's astounding. Which one of the reasons, there's the whole, myth about why the red cars went away. One of the biggest reasons is, as more and more cars got on the roads, there were so many collisions and slowdowns that no one wanted to take them anymore, because they kept having these encounters with the cars. Don in Hollywood, you're on Air Talk. What do you think about light rail, and do you think it's a worthy replacement for the car?
As someone that's traveled around to various cities with good light rail systems, and I'm very excited about this light rail. The big issue for me right now is that it's signal priority. So the light rail is still stopping for red lights as though it's a car. So you've got, and even over by USC, there's this T intersection where there was like one car that was going to drive through the green light that we had to stop for. We had to stop for a red light for one car, and there was probably a couple hundred people on the expo line. So as soon as our LA DOT and our mayor get the guts to sort of give priority to the light rail system here, you're going to see a lot better service happen, and it's going to be good.
Yeah, I mean, the Gold Line going through Pasadena runs right behind our studios here. It doesn't stop for traffic lights, and it crosses at grade, but everybody else, all the cars get stopped for the Gold Line trains to go through. Megan?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, if you have been one of those cars that's been stopped behind the Gold Line, you know that it's very frustrating. And I guess in some of the places, that he's referring to in downtown where it does not have signal priority, the LA Department of Transportation has pointed out some of these are places where it shares track with the Blue Line. So the number of trains passing through in those spots is extremely frequent. It's in downtown LA where there's already a high volume of traffic, and officials say that it would be really hard to give the train signal priority all the time at those intersections, because it would be a virtual standstill of vehicle traffic. That's what they say.
Yeah, one of the problems they have here with the Gold Line is that they really haven't coordinated the signals well in Pasadena. So the traffic is stopped for an exceptionally long period of time before the train comes through, and it really unnecessarily bogs down traffic to let the trains go.
Right, and that's one of the issues that could be resolved with more reliable service times. All these delays and service interruptions, I believe that LADOT actually does give it a slight preference at lights, but it's only if the train is running on time, on schedule, that it actually makes those lights.
Don, I appreciate it very much. 866-893-KPECC or the Air Talk page, kpecc.org. If you've got a long commute, are you able to use light rail to do it? Now, if you got a short commute, if you're going from Culver City to Santa Monica or something like that, that's an easy do, and light rail is great. You're going from downtown Los Angeles to Pasadena or vice versa, that's easy. If you're doing a long multi-light rail trip, is it really practical to be able to do that? What about even going from Long Beach to downtown Los Angeles? That Blue Line run is a long run. 866-893-KPECC or the AirTalk page, kpcc.org. Mary in Culver City, you're on AirTalk.
Yeah, hi. I would say that if you have children, don't do it. It's just, unless you have the ability to change your child and permit them to a school near where you work, which a lot of people I know who live in the Valley, they do that. They have their children where they're working, and that way if they have a long commute, they're never late to get their child. The child just has to take the commute with them. Mm-hmm. That's kind of a big hassle. But if you don't have kids yet and you're saying, enjoy the ride. I used to live in West Baltimore and commute all the way to D.C. every day, there and back. It was an hour and 45 minutes each way.
Wow.
But you were on the train and you were with everybody else. You read a book, you did your hair, you put on your makeup, people read the newspaper. Everybody kind of knew everybody on that route.
I'll bet.
And so it was quite convenient and actually kind of lovely to not have to worry about